Okay, hello there. So I have a message on my heart that I wanted to share. And this has to do mostly with like 90s kids, I guess maybe even 80s kids as well. But especially like if you were born in like the early to end of the 90s. Okay. Anyways, let's just get into it. So basically, your teenage years are your most vulnerable years, right? So you're not really an adult yet. You're still living at home with your parents. You're still not really like making your own money unless you did have a side job, but even then, like you're obviously not making enough to support yourself and live on your own. Which is exactly why this video is not tailored to, the new age kids, teenagers of these times, teenagers who were born like after the year 2000, because it's a totally different ball game. And they're experiencing these same things, but on just a different level. So we'll talk about them another time. But this time I'm specifically talking to my generation of people who grew up around this time. Okay, so what happens is you go from elementary school. Elementary school is very communal. You're kind of just friends with everyone. You're in a classroom all day with the same people, so you really know each other pretty well. And you've done arts and crafts together. You've done different like creative things, and so you've already been able to express yourself. Not to mention your ego is not fully formed, so you're not really comparing yourself to others. You're just kind of like flowing and loving life. You're not overthinking anything. You're not like rationalizing things. That all comes later. But so in elementary school, the focus of your breaks, essentially when you're not in class and learning and doing whatever, is to play. Like you have so many options. I used to live for kickball or handball or whatever the one is where like the ball's on the pole, like connected to the string, and then you just like punch it around, like, I don't know, things that we would play, of course. But like all those things, the monkey bars, everything, like I used to live for that. So every time we would have free time, I would like, oh my God. Or I would hang out with a friend, like, depending on what I needed that day. But so we went from, being very sovereign in elementary school, being able to choose whatever we want to do, everything else is taken care of, whatever, to middle school where things really start to shift. This is where we start to want to fit in, where we really get that idea of like, I need to have a posse. Personally, for me, once again, I went to a school where there was a lot of violence too. There was a lot of like gangs and like fights would break out. And so it was almost like a survival thing where like you needed to have, a posse. Obviously, if you were like that kind of kid and was like into fights and stuff and like started drama with people, but you would kind of want to have a posse. And around that time, school starts to matter more because now they start to separate you in different classes. Before it was like randomized, supposedly, who knows, but they would just like group you guys in a class all together, and then that's, your class. But in middle school, that's when you start to be exposed to different teachers. You have 6 periods a day, so you're seeing different people throughout the day. And then on your lunch breaks, there's no like open field to go play in. And I guess there technically is like where the PE area is, but if you were hanging out there, you were probably not really indoctrinated in the system. So I don't know, you're already sovereign doing your own thing at that point. But what I mean to really drive home is that in middle school is when it starts to shift and things start to get more serious and your grades really matter. Because I know personally for me, when I started in 6th grade, or even just throughout elementary school, I did not care about grades. I would ditch my classes. I was like a super rebel. And I would like pass notes to people, like talking shit about the teacher. Then the teacher would find out. So awkward. But I would like, be the rebellious one. And then once I got to middle school, like something just clicked. It was like, oh shit, like this is real. And so I started trying, and I went from regular classes in 6th grade to like, I don't know, intermediate classes. I think it was called AA. I don't even know what it stood for. And then into honors classes in 8th grade. So I really like traveled up the ladder of the elite in middle school based on that. But aside from all that, you lost that social time to be like a community and to hang out with everyone, because in elementary school it's like everyone is your friend, you guys all play together, there's no ego, you don't take things the wrong way, you get over it. If you get mad at someone or whatever, you just move on. But in middle school, it became super cliquey where you're gonna need to have a group. And so you end up just falling into like some group of like people that are pretty similar to you. And sometimes this leads you all the way through high school until you graduate. Like I remember people that were friends with the same people from 6th grade to 12th grade. And so throughout that time, you're not exposed to a lot of other opinions. Like you kind of just all become like the same, like you mold into one another. And these years are very critical for us because we're really discovering who are we as an individual. And instead of having that space in our education system to be able to play around with different things and like have a structure that allows for you to discover who you are, instead it's very like, strict, very orderly, and people just like end up falling into their friends groups or didn't even have friends. And then you move into high school, and high school is even worse because at that point you have like raging hormones, your body is changing, you're becoming more sexual. And so the people who are usually the popular people, like let's just talk about stereotypes, are going to be like your jock guy who plays on the football team, who's like tall and has like big shoulders. And then your popular girls are going to be like a cheerleader, a girl that's like very like, confident, and also very endowed, I guess you could say. Yeah. So it starts to really kind of twist things in a different way, where it's like the people who, look a certain way are placed kind of like above everyone else through the hierarchy of school, because sports in our society and unfortunately in our school system are like the glue that holds everything together. So all the social events that deal with like the whole school coming together are surrounded around like football, or at least that's how they were in my school. Maybe it was a different sport at your school. And so these people are up there in the hierarchy, so it makes everybody else that's not developing as quickly feel like less than and feel like closed out from the system. And so we once again join these cliques, and I was pretty much friends with the same people throughout 6th through 8th grade. And then once I started high school, I was like, man, these people are a lot of drama. So we just kept having drama and drama. I had like a group of 5 girlfriends that we were super close, and everyone would talk shit about each other behind their back, and it just was not like a healthy group to be in. And so I think after 9th grade is actually when I finally like left that circle and I found different friends, but I was in different friends groups every year because I just couldn't find the people that were like my people. And that's the thing, that there's like this big pressure to like, you're about to become an adult, but you're still living with your parents, so you still have that security. But once you get out there, then you're gonna, like you feel this pressure building of like, what am I gonna do after high school? Which is why most of us fell into the whole like, I need to go to college, because then I can like make something of myself, and I need more schooling. I need more of the system. I'm actually gonna pay the system this time, an arm and a leg, just because like, I need them to validate me and to tell me that I can have a job. There is like a little fly in here. Little fly, we invite you to please make your way to another part of the room. Okay, so is that all I wanted to talk about? I mean, I feel like I'm just going around in circles, but that's like the time also that you start to hang out with people more outside of school. And so you start going to parties, and then you're exposed to alcohol and drugs, and instead of, you know, really honoring like your own inner voice and like standing for whatever you believe in, you start to kind of blur that with what everybody else wants. And so it's really just indoctrinating us to be in this sheeple mentality. And I don't mean to say sheeple is like a bad thing, like it's just for lack of a better term, because sheep flock together. Same with birds. Birds of a feather flock together. Okay, cool. Let's call them birds. So you end up being in this group of birds, and you guys are like doing the same things and whatever. And then, you know, you move on to whatever else you do in life. But it's not until probably later down the line when you really reflect on that time and you're like, man, that really like foundationally, subconsciously like messed with me, because you realize that school was just programming you to work a dead-end job that you don't even love and make just enough money to be able to, you know, maybe get an apartment. I mean, if you're in LA, you can't even afford a house at this point, even if you do go get your bachelor's. So it's like, with a high school degree, like you better be doing something for yourself or working for some, like, you know, you need to have some strings be pulling for you. Hopefully on God's side and not the other side. But yeah, so that's I think a lot of my passion in doing this work, especially with soul retrieval, is going back and finding where these emotions like started coming from, and understanding them, like really bringing them to the surface, and having compassion towards yourself of like why you fell into that loop. And maybe you're not even aware that some of your decisions are still being based from such a young age. Maybe you think that like, oh, I've gone through like 25 awakenings and 54 nights of the soul, and I've done like a bajillion mushroom ceremonies and this and that, and like you think that you're like so woke, but really you still have stuff that you have to release. And I mean, this stuff comes up on its own, but what better way than to really like honor that space and sit with yourself and be like, we are doing the work, we are clearing. The fly is back. Oh my gosh, fly. I don't know where he went. Go that way, go that way. So yeah, I guess that's all I have to say for now. I will be making another video about the newer age kids, because I feel like that one's super important, especially because they are still either in this or they just got out of like their teenage phase, but you know, it's still like fresh in their bodies, and we need to let a lot of shit go if we're going to the golden age, or whatever you want to call it. Okay, hope you're having a lovely afternoon, and we will talk soon.